In this video, I am going to be explaining the difference between open hand combat versus closed fist combat. And if you do not believe me, there is a difference. First of all, I am going to verbally explain the difference, and then I will give a few examples in action. I don't have anybody to join me with it, but I do have experience like with shadow fighting, so to speak. So to begin, the difference between open hand and closed hand combat is open hand is less restrictive on the muscles. If you haven't ever noticed, if you have your arm extended like this, and you lift your arm up like this, or even if you make a closed fist, you're actually constricting your bicep, as well as your tricep, as well as your forearm. Everything is constricting. And so you are actually restraining as effective of a motion as there could be with a closed fist. Now, whereas with an open hand, you have a free flow of motion. You can move in many more directions with better flow than a closed fist. The idea that a closed fist attack will do more damage may or may not be true, depending on how far the combat is taken. But there will be more immediate damage done to your hand than the person receiving the attack, at least if you're in a fair fight. You know, if you're fighting someone that's obviously below your level, then it's not really a challenge either way. But if you're in a challenging fight and you're using closed fist as your option, you're going to do more damage to your hand than versus open hand combat. Even a chop or something like that does less damage to your hand in the end than a punch. A punch is very hard on the structure of the hand. The hand is all essentially straight lines, right? And structurally, you're compressing that and bending it. And so you're not only doing damage here, but your knuckles as well are taking the brunt of the damage. Everything here is potentially being caved in. And whereas here, you're allowing flexibility because there's a healthy layer of muscle on the side of the hand here. And you can absorb a lot more of the pressure on the side of the hand. Also, in terms of pressure, a higher amount of pressure comes from a smaller point. If you take a hammer, for example, you're not going to put a hole in a piece of wood with just a hammer all that easily. You're going to compress it and compress it and compress it until there might be like a small dent in it comparable to a hole. But the thing is, if you want to actually put a hole in that piece of wood, you need something pointed like a nail. You need something with a more concentrated point of focus on a dedicated area, and the same amount of pressure is increased through a point. So if you take a fist, it's a much wider surface area, correct? Than this, the side of the hand. Okay. So then, aside from open hand versus closed fist, all that's left is, kicks and like using your knees and things like that. To me, that's once you're more on the offensive of the fight. Once you have an opening, right? And that's also at the same time, if you can move fast enough, a perfect time for a grapple. So depending on whether you want to kick or wrestle, open hand leaves more availability to that option than closed fist. And philosophically speaking, open hand versus closed fist is sort of about violence versus non-violence. Violence is, like, what's a good way to put this? Violence tires itself out. Non-violence welcomes in the tired soul, right? So, like, in that aspect, philosophically speaking, there's sort of an advantage to the mindset of the fight, so long as you have enough skill to approach the confrontation. I am now going to show an example of what it is like fighting open hand versus closed fist. So to begin with the open hand, you can throw yourself out farther. You have better flow, less restriction, more flexibility. Okay? Okay? Versus closed fist. You are in place. You are stood in place. You are standing your ground. You have your stance. Your stance takes longer to adjust. Okay? You have a powerful burst, but you have to focus very highly on how it's directed. So you cannot come for the enemy with arms flailing, right? You need to do jabs and swings, right? And the swing is something that takes longer closed fist than open hand. The jab with closed fist is shorter of a reach than going like this, open hand. You can still get direct face attacks. You can still jab. It still leaves you an opening for using the knee or a kick. So I think that is evidence that open hand, if used correctly, is more effective than closed fist in terms of combat and philosophically speaking.